And we're live.
Hi, good evening. Welcome to the Senior College Evening presentation that we are going to give tonight from Bergen Catholic. Thank you all so much for joining us. I'm going to start off tonight's presentation with a guest appearance by Brother Jason Ford from Iona College. He's been so gracious to join us from New Rochelle, New York, to come and speak to you a little bit about the CSS profile, the FAFSA, and in general, the financial aid process. So I welcome Brother Jason Ford, and I'm going to hand it over to him, and then I will jump back on with my fellow counselors, and we will talk about the college application process and everything that you should know. Please utilize the chat if you have any questions as we go through, and we are happy to, all of us, jump on at any time and answer your questions. And without further ado, Brother Jason Ford.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. I am going to throw up a shared screen. I hope that it also has my PowerPoint on it. Do you see that or no?
Yeah, we're good.
You see it? Perfect. I lost you guys though, so give me just 1 second. Sorry. Is it still there?
Yep, you're good.
All right, perfect. All right. Well, anyway, welcome. Thank you so much for having me this evening. It's a pleasure to be here. I often have good opportunities to come down and speak with the students at Bergen Catholic. So tonight we go over some financial aid basics. We're a lot more familiar at Iona with the FAFSA and all of that entails. So I definitely will have a little bit more heavy detail on that. I will briefly touch on the CSS form, but really it is similar in a lot of ways, but it looks for some additional information. So my first 4 or 5 slides are going to look like they have a lot of information on them, but it's really just to give general terms and to give all of us the same vocabulary. If at some point you have a question or anything like that, I believe you can throw that in the chat. The way that my screen is working right now, I cannot see the chat. So if the question comes up when the other counselors wants to jump in and let me know, I'll happily answer anything that I can. So again, as I said, just getting into some general terms for financial aid. First and foremost, you're going to hear all these things differently, or you're going to hear some form of these from most schools. So what is generally called an offer letter from a college is the letter that comes from the financial aid office, and that offer letter includes typically their complete financial aid offer. That includes, which we're going to talk about in a couple minutes, merit scholarship, need-based scholarships and aid, grant, and then any additional awards that a student may be eligible for. It typically should also include the complete cost of attendance. Sometimes this is hard to find, and it's hard to do the analyzation of that on the form, but it typically is all there on the same page. So that is the offer letter. For most schools, you'll receive your admission letter, which actually comes from the Office of Admissions. That may, and most times will, include a merit award, which is your first financial aid offer. It's the larger scholarship that you get, for a school for your GPA and your SAT scores or something to that effect. Then after that, things are considered using the CSS form, the FAFSA form, and other metrics that a school has. The term that I use there, cost of attendance, these can be found in general public domains, but also should be listed on every college's website. This is the actual cost to attend the institution. So when you're looking for the cost of attendance, that is what it's actually going to cost the student. So that would have the tuition fees, standard additional expenses. So if you're a commuter student, they do a general number and figure that out. If you're living in the residence halls, they have that factored in. So there are regulations and guidelines established by the federal government, and that also helps with the distribution of financial aid from the federal government to ensure that it's done in a uniform manner. Default, any of us that have ever taken out a loan or met anyone who's taken out a loan have come across this term. To default is to not be able to repay a loan and to fall into a negative side of that payment. I don't think I have to go into too much on that. It's just a term that we have up there. You'll see this phrase thrown up by a lot of schools, and I even am guilty of it myself as a counselor. When I'm talking to families, I might say, "Oh, the EFC, the EFC." So that is the expected family contribution. The expected family contribution is after you submit information to FAFSA. They send you back a letter or a form, and that form will indicate, now it's done electronically, they'll indicate the amount of money they expect you as a family to be able to put towards the cost of your child going to college. In your case, it's your son's. One thing to remember with FAFSA is they're really looking at your tax return information plus the number of dependents that you have that are of college age. So they are not taking into account much else. They are not looking at mortgages. They are not looking at vehicle ownership, multiple properties. They're not looking at private high school tuition for other children or elementary school tuition for other children. They are simply looking at your tax return information, and they are simply looking at the number of college age students that live in your household that are on your tax return information. CSS is different. CSS does a more in-depth look. Some people, which is again my opinion on this, but is why Iona College does not use it. Some feel it's a little bit more intrusive look. But they will look for more depth on the forms that they are completing for their review. So they will use certain things for additional consideration under the CSS form. This great term that you'll hear people mispronounce often as FAFSA, because it's easier to say FAFSA, but it's FAFSA, F-A-F-S-A, FAFSA, is the free application for student aid. Years ago, I used to say this, and I'll say it again tonight. It is free. It's not that hard to complete, so don't go paying anyone to do it. If someone volunteers to do it for you, and then they turn around and say, "Oh, it costs you money," it takes about 25, 30 minutes. If you have your tax returns in front of you. One of the things I've said to families thinking about it is, even if you qualify for about $1,000, that's all you're going to get. Even if it took you an hour to fill it out, that's a pretty good return on investment. 1 hour of your time, and then you get $1,000 potentially in a grant or a loan or something like that. I've worked for a good long time. I've never gotten paid that kind of money. So it's definitely something to do. It opens on October 1st, and I have a little bit more information as we get into it. So this is just to put the term up there: free application for student aid. There are federal direct student loan programs. So these are loans, which again, I have more information on, which we'll talk about, are loans covered by or presented by the federal government for your child. So there are things like the Stafford loan, which now is called I think they're actually called federal direct and federal subsidized loan, Parent Plus loans, and so forth. And again, I'll talk a lot more about those in a moment. All right. This term everyone has probably heard, the financial aid package. So that is everything wrapped up in a nice bow, similar to the initial offer letter. This will include every bit of aid, but it typically does not include the cost of attendance or anything of that nature. So it's just the total amount. So this, which I'll talk a little bit more about later on, but this is something I would warn many families and many parents about. I'm going to just use two examples of schools, just to say College A, College B. College A and College B are both, within 20 miles of Manhattan. College A, their full tuition is about $80,000, where College B, their full tuition is about $58,000. If College A sends a financial aid package and they're giving the student $35,000, remember they cost $80,000, right? So you have to do the math that their $80,000 minus the $35,000 leaves you still having to pay $45,000. Whereas if College B is $58,000 and they give you $28,000, you're only having to pay $30,000, right? So a lot of times families look at the financial aid package and not the offer letter, and they think that College A actually values their child more because they're getting a larger award package. But the reality is, percentage-wise, College A is making you pay more to go to their school, and the term that we use in the college side as discount rate, the amount that we take off the cost of tuition is actually far less. So that's just something to keep in mind as you move forward, as you look at these things. Just because the scholarship appears bigger doesn't actually mean it is. There's that percentage that you have to look at. Financial need, again, is connected to the expected family contribution. This is the amount by which the family is able to compute what you are determined to contribute by the federal government. It's the amount that you fall short. Many colleges will do their absolute best to cover that. Obviously, only the highest endowed colleges can actually guarantee that they will cover total need. So if that is something that you're looking at, that's really the Ivies and a handful of other schools that have that ability. But many colleges do their absolute best to try to cover the gap or the need. Gift aid is considered financial aid that does not have to be paid back, hence the title gift in it. That would be scholarships and some forms of grants. Grants are the type of award it's based on need or merit and does not require repayment. So again, important phrases. Again, common stuff, but interest is the amount of money or the percentage charged to your loan or other payments, and that can be determined. So for the federal loans, that's up on their website. For private loans, you deal that with your bank or whomever you're getting along through. I've already mentioned this term, but just to cover it again, merit-based aid are things awarded to the student based completely on performance in high school and other characteristics. It could be leadership, it could be some sort of artistic ability. In some schools' cases, like Iona, it might be attending a Catholic school. So those are definitely things that fall under merit-based aid. And again, as I said earlier, merit-based tends to be the largest sum of money awarded. Need analysis is a process of reviewing the student's financial aid application done at the college, the individual college, to determine the amount of financial aid that they are eligible for. So this is where there can be some difference in award amounts, especially if you're applying to two schools in the same area that have a very similar profile. The way that they look at the information, obviously, is an individual financial aid counselor is going to analyze your documents. Now, most schools are very good and they have very strict parameters and they have tight controls as to how things are processed. But there's still a human portion of it. So this is where if you do see something, for example, if you are qualified for some sort of federal assistance through the Pell Scholarship, and one school's giving you $5,000, the other school's giving you $1,000, it's good to check in with both and determine, first of all, is that an estimate or is it the actual amount? At Iona, we much prefer to give you the final amount, which is one of the reasons we don't like to send out many forms prior to your admission that kind of guess and say this is an estimated financial aid award. A lot of parents don't see that fine print when they're looking at some of the schools that send that out, but schools can estimate too based on other factors. We don't think it's a good practice to do that, but you may see some of the colleges that you're applying to using estimates in their first round of letters that go out to you. So again, just look at that carefully. And again, that might explain a discrepancy, but also the discrepancy might be based on the fact that a financial aid counselor at one school, just the way that they saw your numbers, interpreted them one way that may be incorrect. And so someone can always review them and make sure that it is done correctly so that you're getting the right amount of money. So need-based financial aid, as we've already talked about, are things connected to the need that your family demonstrates. Again, takes a loan on grants, loans, and work study. Again, most of these, with the exception of loans, do not require that you pay them back. Student aid report is the form that's sent after you submit your FAFSA. And this would indicate if you are Pell eligible. So it's the form that the student and the family, should they have set up their account properly, would get from that. And finally, as I mentioned, work study. It's an opportunity for a student to work part-time and to attend college. All right, so it helps them to cover. All right, that's a lot of terms and things of that nature. I hope I've been talking for about 15 minutes. So I want to pop out of the full screen just for a minute and just see if there's, I don't think that there are, because I'm sure someone would call up, but just see if there's any questions about anything that I've talked about so far before we go in a little bit more into the process. Oh, there's a couple questions, but they're from Mr. Spiegel. Sorry. Anybody else have any other questions? Again, I just want to give you a break from me talking so long. Looks good.
Yeah, I think we're good.
Perfect. All right. So I'll jump back in to the full screen. All right. So to apply for federal student aid, you, the parents, and your child create a user ID number. So that is found at fsaid.ed.gov. I think all the other stuff there is unnecessary, but it gets you directly to where you need to go. But the fsaid.ed.gov brings you to that website. You create the user ID, which years ago used to be referred to as the PIN number. And so it is similar to a PIN for your bank account, or the 4-digit code that you may have. It allows you access. It's like a password of sorts. The financial aid forms of FAFSA are then completed electronically using the website www.fafsa.ed.gov, and they do have mobile opportunities to do that as well. Again, as I said, it's pretty straightforward to complete FAFSA. With FAFSA, you are basically taking information from your tax returns and you are putting it into the corresponding boxes on the FAFSA. So, like box 12, if there is such a box, corresponds on both documents. It should be the same number. So I think they make it pretty easy, but it is a bit tedious because there's multiple screens and multiple pages. So it can be frustrating, but again, as I said, it is definitely worth the effort to take advantage of the simpleness of the things they have. I definitely tried to make it easier, and I've always said, and I know my financial aid people feel this way, if you really are struggling and having a hard time, obviously especially if you're considering a school like Iona, you reach out and we would love to help you with that. But many other schools would do the same thing. I know, many schools that their financial aid people would be more than willing to help. So that school that you are applying to would definitely help and walk you through part of this process. The thing that has changed, especially if you maybe had a child a few years back who went to college, they reconfigured the calendar for this process. So it's not really that complex, but it's different. So on October 1st of this year, the FAFSA forms will become available. So if you wait, if you wake up at midnight, having gone to bed very early at the end of September, and it's October 1 at 12:01 a.m., and you want to jump on and start filling those forms out, you can do that. You would need your 2019 tax return information. So it's the prior year. That tax information gets entered in to the area for 21-22. Now, I warn you with this, because it's October And because there are going to be students attending college in the spring semester, they ask specifically, is this for the 2020, 2021, or 21-22 academic year? If your child is looking to come as a traditional freshman in the fall semester, you need to fill out the forms for 21-22. It happens all the time that the default is still going to be set to 2021, and you're going to start filling out the forms and you're going to do it for the wrong year. And then you're going to get frustrated because you spent an hour filling out forms, and then hit send, and then the college says, we don't have them. And then you have a receipt that says that you finished it. And you reach out to the college and you send them the copy of the receipt, and they still say, we don't have them. So just at the beginning, take that minute or two to make sure that you're doing the 21-22 forms. There's also a form that if you've done your taxes electronically, you can use the IRS data retrieval tool. You can sync them, and actually then the tool actually pulls your information and populates the boxes that it needs. As it says right there. Yeah, so that will eliminate having to estimate anything and go back and update your FAFSA should you have been trying to figure that out. This last statement is true of almost any college. Applications or FAFSA forms should be completed before April 15th. So if you're applying to a school, obviously most schools have that May 1st deadline. So you're probably going to have your FAFSA completed if you're completing one before that date. But if you wait and wait and wait, at a point, you're not going to be able to be given that priority consideration. I have never encountered in 7 years now at Iona a shortage of financial aid funds. However, it's possible that things could happen, but it's also possible that you apply later, or you just choose not to submit your FAFSA, and so you now are not eligible to receive certain things that you might have thought you were receiving. Again, at Iona, we would never send you the information about what you're eligible for that the FAFSA would require unless we have your FAFSA, but some schools might estimate, and so you might see something, but you haven't actually submitted your FAFSA. So that's another point of communication between you and the admissions and financial aid offices of the college, just to make sure that they have your documents on file. And again, are these estimates or real award notifications? All right. In terms of the types of federal aid, just briefly, and state aid, but I crossed this out because you guys are not in New York State. If you are a New York State resident, which is possible, some of you might live Rockland County or some other places and make the commute. But as a New York State resident, there is a state higher education award called New York State TAP that we'd be very happy to help you with. As an undergraduate, looking at college from the federal government, there's the federal Pell Grant. The federal Pell Grant ranges from, I've never seen $1, but $1 to a little, to around the $6,000 amount. So the federal Pell Grant typically would require a student to have an EFC that indicates there's need in the family, and then that need would be met partially through the federal government, and then through other means as well. On top of the federal Pell Grant, there is what is known as SEOG, the Federal Supplemental Education Opportunity Grant. I've seen those typically between $1,000 and $2,000. So these typically are, for families of high need, but I've also seen the SEOG used creatively by a college to help, in real circumstances that we understand need to exist. So again, because of being a smaller institution, when we have conversations with families, we might hear their true need. They're a family of 5. This is their oldest child. They need to save money for the other kids. So we might be able to get the SEOG into their hands just to help defray the costs. Bigger institutions may not have that flexibility because theirs really does need to go exclusively to the people that fit every parameter. But again, that's a conversation, and once you get to know the office that you're working with, they'll be able to assist you better with that. There are two types of loans that the student could be eligible for. The good thing about these for you as parents, unless the child has extremely bad credit, they typically can get these on their own. There's still the case where parents are welcome to be co-signers. So there's the subsidized loan. This interest rate actually may be out of date. I apologize. I think it's a year old, that number. So it may be lower as interest rates have gone down significantly. But the subsidized is completely need-based, and the federal government pays your interest while you are a student in school, taking a minimum of at least 6 credits or 2 classes, I believe, is the minimum. So if you change your status and take only 1 class, if you withdraw from college, within 6 months of doing that, or if you graduate within 6 months of doing that, all of a sudden the interest starts to accrue again. So that's a nice loan to, if you have to get a loan to get that. Again, loan is typically around $4,000. I believe as you go further in the institution, they can increase it slightly. So that's just good to know that there's flexibility there. The next is the unsubsidized, which is typically offered to every student, and I believe that award can be up to $5,000. And the student is completely responsible. It's a basic loan. Typically, it has better interest rates than private loans because it is a federal loan. The warning with these types of loans, first and foremost, right? Bernie is not running, so college is not going to be free. But also, he's not going to control the loans, and his group that says everyone goes bankrupt because of loans. Yes, loans can be dangerous, but taking out a small loan like these when you're going to a school that you can afford and are getting decent merit awards is not a bad thing. It helps, gives you an easy place to build some credit. The problem is if you're going to take out $45,000 or $50,000 in loans and don't have the means to deal with that later on, that's where problems arise. So we would never encourage a student to take out that size of a loan. I mean, that's almost the full cost of our tuition. So that's not in our best interest or the students. But some schools will allow that without trying to interfere. Additionally, there's the PLUS loan, which that is a loan given to the parent for their child. It is in the parent's name. The parent needs to pass a credit check, and they can borrow up to the complete cost of attendance at the institution in that loan. Again, this number might be slightly off, but it's approximately 7% at a fixed interest rate. That's a tricky one typically because the people that really need that are usually in need and also have typically have a more questionable credit history. So it can be harder for them to acquire that particular loan. But again, there may be some additional, or one parent might be eligible, the other may not be. Maybe there's another family member who'd be willing to assist the family on that particular thing. But the PLUS loan is given to the parents, but it's in their name, not the child's. Finally, in terms of loans, there's alternative loans, which we're all familiar with, which come from the bank, come from other sorts of financial institutions to lend you money. Almost all of them require a credit check, and either the student or the parent can be the borrower.
Hey Jay, can you? I can't see your screen. Could you reshare it?
Oh yeah, sure. Was it just that last slide, or?
Yeah, I think so. It was at 7:30. So.
Oh, maybe okay. Let me do that. Back.
Now I can see it.
Oops, sorry. All right, so see here. Everybody else can see it? Was this where we were, or was I?
Yeah, you're good.
All right. So again, as I said, the PLUS loan and the alternative loan, they're private scholarships. So I'm getting, close to the end. I have a couple more slides, and then we'll be able to ask any questions and go from there. Private loans are usually, things that exist within your community. Employers may offer them. So growing up as a child, my father was a Boston police officer. The Boston Patrolmen Association offered private scholarships to their employees. They ranged from $1,000 to $5,000. There are foundations galore that offer scholarships. Businesses, things like insurance companies, banks often have private scholarships, and then obviously charitable organizations. At the bottom of the page there, those two websites are sites that we've found list a lot of information, but there's a lot of other good information on different websites. So fastweb.com and finaid.org have a lot of financial aid information. These are all going to be done and organized individually, obviously, which can be somewhat frustrating. But if you do some of the research, you're going to find things that you are uniquely qualified for, and go from there. Not listed here, there's also consideration at certain schools if they have what we might call institutional scholarships. We have another name for them here at Iona. I'm just drawing a blank on it. But those are endowed scholarships. Thank you. That's the correct word. So those are scholarships that have been created by somebody, and maybe in honor or memory of a deceased family member, or someone who's just been very successful and they want to put some money aside. There's usually very strong stipulations. We have one that says, for example, the student is born in the Bronx, New York, attended St. Charles Borromeo Elementary School, went to All Hallows High School, and is coming in as a freshman at Iona College. So obviously that one was created by someone who went to All Hallows High School and St. Charles Borromeo, who wants to continue that legacy and that tradition. But there's some others that just are a little bit more simple, like a student from northern New Jersey who plays baseball, that may exist at a college or even in the private scholarship world. So definitely investigate those things. The deadlines are all varying. Typically, though, they are awarded in the spring, so that you will know what you're receiving from those private scholarships. The question to ask of a financial aid office is always unique. Some schools, when you receive private scholarships, might adjust other awards. So that's definitely a question to ask. So if a school is going to adjust an award because State Farm gave you a $3,000 scholarship, and so let's just, school A is going to reduce the amount of money they're giving you by $3,000 because of that, you might want to ask State Farm to write the check to you, and then you pay your tuition if they're willing to do that. Some organizations won't do that because it violates their business practices, but some organizations will because they understand the colleges might also change your awards, and that can happen. Outside money, we typically at Iona, and I've never heard of us reducing scholarships. We like money of all sorts as long as it's not our money. But that is a question definitely worth asking. All right. And just really briefly, there are federal work-study opportunities for students. Federal work-study is based on need, so it's based off of the FAFSA, and that will determine if your child, your son, can work. Typically, there's a certain amount of money, $2,000 to $3,000 per semester, in which the child can work 20 hours a week. Once that money runs out, then the job ends. But some schools have institutional employment, so certain areas, their departmental budget is significant enough that they can afford to employ students. And so if that is the case, then like an office like the admissions office or the athletic office will have jobs for students. And similarly, typically have the same requirements. They're paid minimum wage, 20 hours a week, because we understand their students and they get experience. All right, that's all the information that I have prepared. I'm happy to answer any questions, especially if something I did not touch base on. So if there are any questions, um, I would be happy, and even from the counselors, if there's something that, you know.
Can you see the questions?
I can. Oh, I see a question now. Do we need
Okay,
to not FAFSA? We consider from there as well. Okay, so that varies from institution to institution. It's an excellent question, Heather. Most schools today have moved to the not requiring a FAFSA, but that is not a universal policy. So again, it would depend on the institution. Currently, for me, and many of the schools that we're dealing with at a similar type of institution, you do not need to fill out the FAFSA to be considered. Typically, schools will be pretty clear with that information, though. But you should ask. So that's a school-to-school policy.
How about should all families, regardless of family income, apply for financial aid? Also, do we need a new ID for FAFSA if we currently have an ID for a child in college now?
Yeah. So I highly recommend everyone to complete the FAFSA. Obviously, there are unique circumstances that, I won't say blanket across the board. Everyone absolutely should do it. I've had circumstances of people that probably should, but because of what's going on in their family, it was not in their best interest at the moment to do that. I've also had circumstances where families just, they had a previous child go through and they experienced it and they did not like the experience, so they didn't want to do it. But I would recommend, unless there's some legitimate reason to try to complete a FAFSA, I do not believe that you would need to create new information for a new child. I believe you can update that. I believe you can, because it's going to be pulling the information from your file as well. But I believe, now that I'm saying that, the ID may be actually assigned to the child, and you are then paired to them. So, unfortunately, I don't know that answer off the top of my head. Sorry about that.
Okay, the last question that I see, what were they called? The endowment scholarships? That the type, for example, from the person from the Bronx?
Yeah. At Iona, it's called an endowed scholarship. But there, some schools, they just call it like institutional scholarships. They might be called something of that effect. So those scholarships that come in, that exist, there's a lot of factors. So at Iona, an incoming freshman typically is not eligible for them. You have to have a GPA at Iona in order to receive an endowed scholarship. So obviously it's a continuous. There are a few that are very clearly, like that particular one I listed. I said they're looking for a kid from those particular schools who then comes to Iona. Other schools will definitely have things like that. It's worth asking either private institutional scholarships or endowed scholarships typically are the names that exist for them. And so to ask the college if they have it. We list them in our catalog, so they technically are publicly available. And I would recommend, once a student's here, I would direct them to look at the course catalog, because it has them all listed for them. So they know what they can apply for. They see the deadlines and application requirements.
Okay, last question that I see for the FAFSA. My daughter will be entering an MBA program. She's 21 and still a dependent. Does she count as another person in college, even though she will be in a graduate program?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they'll take that into consideration, that there is still payment going out from the family. They obviously, her individual financial aid situation changes because the federal government established financial aid to cover 140 credits of undergraduate study. But yes, it should still benefit your other child that you have a daughter enrolled at graduate school while she's an undergraduate.
Okay, that's all the questions that I see right now. Do you have some contact information if anyone has any questions that they could reach out to you?
Yes, I do.
Great.
I'll type it in here for Al.
Okay, yeah, you could put it up on the screen. That would be great.
Yeah, I'll put it up on the bottom if you want to.
Sure. Hopefully it comes out somewhat clear. That's a lot of information there. It's going to be a long term. You can pick whatever you want to put up there. Email's probably the best, right?
Oh, yeah, I see it. Okay. Hang on 1 second. Yeah, you know what? We'll just see how it looks putting everything up there. Not, then we'll take down.
There we go.
Awesome.
So, yeah, oop,
Oh, hold on.
yeah.
See if I can clean that up just a little bit.
As that gets up there, seriously, do not hesitate to reach out to me if you do have any questions. I'm happy to get an answer for you if I don't. So if that one parent does want to circle back with me, I can get an answer first thing tomorrow morning for you about needing a new PIN for your financial aid between two children. I'll ask the director of financial aid that question specifically. If you want to just shoot me an email, and I will get you that answer. But even if something comes up in a week and you say, "Oh my God, I wish I could ask this question," don't hesitate to reach out. I'm more than happy to help in any way that I can.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brother Ford, for coming and presenting tonight. We really appreciate your knowledge.
Yeah.
I am going to transition now into the college counseling part of the presentation. Again, if anybody has any questions as we're going along, the wonderful counselors that work here at Bergen Catholic are also on the stream, so they're happy to help join in and answer questions as we go through. Just for the sake of time, I'm going to show you a PowerPoint presentation, pretty much general information about the college counseling department here, how we do things, and what the college application process really should look like for you and for your sons. This week in the classrooms, in English classes, myself and the counselors have been in virtually to every English class, and we have been going over the Common Application and how to match your Common Application with your Naviance account. I have shared that link with you in this presentation, so you will be able to see it as well. And if you would like to watch it step by step, it goes through every part of how the Common Application works and how to go about doing that. So there really should be no question about how to do a Common Application and how to ask for teacher recommendation letters. So that's all there. All of the boys have had that. In addition, the transcripts have all been sent out to you this evening. And those transcripts are the senior transcripts that are sent out to colleges. So we sent them to all of the boys. So every senior received it. In addition to that, the parents have all received it as well. So if you could please make sure you check your email tonight and take a look at that. We ask that you please fill out the attached questionnaire, which is called an authorization for school records. It allows us here at Bergen Catholic to legally release your transcript to colleges or coaches or anyone that you ask us to do that on your behalf. And without it, we cannot send it out legally. So I have gone through the transcripts individually. I've had the counselors look at them as well, and we've cleaned up any errors that we have seen. But please, we do make mistakes, and so I ask you to go through it carefully and make sure that there are no errors. I ask that if you do see something that is incorrect, that you get that back to me in writing by October 1st so that I can rectify it, and I will send you a new transcript to let you know that it has been fixed. If the transcript looks good, please, by all means, go ahead and send the transcript release form back. It's electronic, and it will all go to a spreadsheet so we know you're ready to go, and that's all you need to do at that point, okay? So I'm going to get started with the presentation. All right, so I don't know, hopefully you can see the screen, but this is the checklist essentially for you to take a look at. And essentially this is what the college process looks like. I sent you out an email a couple of days ago that has essentially what a complete college application looks like. So if you go back and you take a look at that, you'll see in there, basically every step that has to be completed. But this is just a handy dandy tool to use. You can print it out, you can keep it on your refrigerator to make sure, hey, let me take a look and go through this and make sure that I've done everything on this list. And it's just a season by season checklist to let you know that you've done everything that you can. Okay, so in your time, you can take a look through it. All right, so we ask you to refine and balance the list. This tonight's presentation is really part 2 of the presentations that I am going to give you. So part 1 was really the college search process. This is really meant to be the college application process. So by now, you really should have had the opportunity with your sons to refine and balance the list. So you should be on the same page about where you're applying, how you're applying, whether it's early decision or early action or rolling admission. And you should have 6 to 8 applications that are really at least started. I told the boys this week that I'd like for them to have at least 1 application ready to go by October 1st. And I know that's a little bit advantageous. However, it is good to have one that's ready, even if it's something like, you know, a school that you really don't want to go to. It's good to just get that first one in, because it forces everybody to get that Common App essay done and to go through the process at least one time. Once that first application is in, then you can take your time and sort of comb through the list and make sure that everything is well balanced. So we ask, my optimal college application season, when I look at it from, you know, the finished perspective, I like to see an 80% success rate. So that means if you're applying to 10 schools, I'd like for you to have gotten into, or the boys to have gotten into 8 out of the 10 schools, okay? So looking at Naviance and utilizing that as a guide, we like for you to have safety schools, which means that your grades and the students that have come before you at Bergen Catholic, you are far above the number or the type of student that had gotten into that school. A target school is somebody who's very similar to you. They have the same grades, they've taken the same courses, and in a regular year would have had very similar SAT or ACT scores, okay? You wanna look at how likely is it that I'm going to get into that school? And certainly if you ever have a question about that, that's something that you can come and ask me or one of your counselors and just say, hey, listen, I really love Villanova, but I'm not sure that I am Villanova material. What do you think? And we're going to be very honest with you to say, yes, I think you could get into Villanova, but you're going to have to apply this way. And we will give you the advice as to what is going to maximize your chances of getting in, okay? A lot of this is not just about what you have done academically. It's about a strategy and finding out what is the best way to get into that school that has always been your dream, okay? So look at the quantifiables, look at your GPA, and in a normal year, look at your ACT or SAT scores. There's going to be a lot of you who have not been able to take an SAT or an ACT, and that is okay. This year is a year where it is truly test optional. So if a school says we are test optional, you do not have to send a score. I had a student in my office today who was distraught about the likelihood that he would not be able to send a test score. And he really didn't believe me when I said, I promise you it is truly test optional. And he said probably 5 or 6 times, are you sure? Because I really think I'd be better off sending it. And my advice is this. If you are a student who wants to apply to NYU and your test score comes back and it is over 1,400, and that is the average SAT score or better than what the school has put out as its score from the previous year, then go ahead and send the score. If it is lower, considerably lower, you absolutely do not want to send it. If it's on the cusp, let's say it's a 1380, come and see us and we will give you the advice, because it could round your application out, it could hurt you, it definitely could help you. So please come and ask us that if you have any questions, okay? 2 safeties. It's always really great to have a school that you know that you're going to get into and that you're going to get some money for. So schools that are true safety schools, you're going to be able to afford it because you're going to be way above what they're looking for, and they're going to give you a nice chunk of change, and that's always a beautiful place to be. But for a safety school, make sure you love the school, because kids will say, hey, you know, I applied to Rutgers, but I really don't want to go there. Well, then don't have that be your safety school. Pick a school that you absolutely could see yourself at, that mom and dad and you are all on the same page, because everybody needs to be in the same boat when you're picking the school. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the different types of applications, and I know that this sometimes is confusing. So I'm going to go through the different types, and then we'll talk a little bit about you know, deadlines and what means what. Okay, so early decision is a binding agreement. Basically, this is a school that you have always dreamed about attending, or you went to and you fell in love with. You couldn't see yourself going anywhere else. Typically, the deadline is November 1st. Occasionally, it's November 15th. Some schools like Boston College and Villanova have developed an ED2 program, which is an early decision 2, which is a January 1st deadline. The early decision is a binding agreement. So what it means is that in exchange for the school saying, we'll take a little bit less caliber student for admission, you are giving them the word that you are going to go there no matter what. So if Boston College says, hey, we're going to take you, you get your letter back, in December, well, you're going to Boston College. That is the agreement that you make with them. You might have 100 points lower on an SAT score or an ACT score, or your grade point average might be a couple points lower than what they normally would take for an early action or regular decision student. But in exchange, you're going there. Okay, so make sure if you apply early decision that everybody, like I said, is in the same boat with it. Mom and dad cannot be on Venus and you're on Mars. You guys have to talk about this and talk about it and make sure that it is the place for you. You have to sign a contract. And so when you're signing that contract, it is something that goes through the common application, and your guidance counselor also needs to sign it. So we need to be aware about who's applying where and when. It is very important. If you do not have that contract signed, it is not considered a complete application. Early action is, I would say, probably the most common type of application. What it means is you apply early. So November 1st, November 15th, and you get a decision early. So, if you apply in, let's say, November 15th, generally you're going to have a decision back by late January, early February. Whereas regular decision is a January 1st, January 15th, or February 1st deadline, and you don't get your decision until the springtime. Okay? The other thing is the rolling admission. And a lot of students right now have been very eager because they've been have a lot of time on their hands over the summer, which I absolutely admire. A lot of the boys did the boot camp with us and got their Common App done and their teacher recommendations in and all of their forms completed, and they're ready to go. And they have started to say to their counselors and their teachers, well, why haven't you sent my things yet? I have everything in, and that's great. And we really applaud that. However, some teachers here in the building have 80 to 100 letters of recommendation to write, and that is a big task for them. Poor Mrs. Holt can be seen on Saturdays sitting in Starbucks writing many letters. So please be patient with the teachers and with the counselors. They are flooded with a lot of paperwork at this time of the year. So I have told the boys this, and I'll say it again. If it comes to a 5-day window where your application is due, or it's a rolling application school, which means that they will review your application as they receive it, then come and see me. If we're 2 months out, please be patient. And that is really to just give everybody who's involved in this process the time to write a quality letter of recommendation. You don't want anyone to rush. You want them to have all of the paperwork in front of them and to be able to be ready to go and write the best letter that they possibly can for your sons. Okay? All right, so completing the application. The Common Application and Coalition are generally what the students will need to fill out. The Common Application we did in the classroom, so I set up, like I said, a Common Application with every student. So with the exception of maybe one English class, everybody has had that presentation. The link to what I presented to the boys is here, the YouTube link, so you can go on and you can listen to it. And like I said, it is pretty boring, I will give you that, but it gives you every step-by-step process that you need to complete the Common App. So if you have questions, you can pause it, do each piece, and then continue on to the next section. Once you watch this, you really should have no issue completing your Common Application. Okay. You also need to make sure that the boys have paired their Common App and Naviance, which also is talked about in this video. And once you have done that and you have put in your teacher recommendations, you're really ready to submit an application. So once these steps are actually done, you are ready to go. Okay. The only addition to this is that some schools have their own application and will be found under the university website. So a school like Georgetown or a school like the University of Maryland or Rutgers or MIT, they have their own application or will utilize the Coalition for College application. In addition to, some schools will be on both Common App and Coalition. But if it is not on the Common App and you match your accounts and you see that Rutgers is not there, you need to add it manually. So I showed the boys how to do that, and it's a very easy process. But if you have questions and you certainly don't see how to do it, you can ask any one of us and we will help you do that. Okay. If for some reason when you try to match your accounts, there's something incorrect with your name, and you are not able to get that green bar at the top, please come and see us, and I will troubleshoot. Sometimes there's some difficulty with people who might have a second after their name, so you're the third in line. It depends on how you put it into the common application, and or junior. Sometimes that can mix up the way that the systems interact. All right. And then I guess the last most important piece here is that you are responsible for your application. If it's a November 1 deadline, you have to have it in by November 1st at midnight. If you have it in at 12:01, it is not considered a complete application. We are very good about making our deadlines here. In all of the time that I've been at Bergen Catholic, we have never missed a deadline to my knowledge. I am able to see at any time when the teachers send their letters, when the counselors send their letters. So again, if you have questions, that is what I am here for. Please reach out to me. I am happy to log on to Naviance and tell you. Even if the college is saying we didn't receive something, I get a confirmation number. I can see if it's been received and when it's downloaded by the university. So please don't panic. There is some overlap and time where, it might be that you sent something in, but the school is saying, hey, we didn't get it. I can guarantee you, and I can take a screenshot and let you know it has been received. Okay. But the deadline is imperative that you don't miss it, because if you do, 12:01, they're going to push that early decision, that early action to the regular decision deadline. Okay. So just please be aware of that. College essay. We talked a little bit about this in the seminar, and I worked on this certainly with the students who did the boot camp with us over the summer. The college essay is obviously a very important piece of your application. It is the part that I think a lot of times is overlooked, because it is, by the time you get done with your Common App, you're pretty much done, and you're like, I just want to be finished with this. English teachers, Miss Conley and Miss Sanclivier, have done the essay in the classroom with all of the boys. This is always the first assignment in the English class. So they have been discussing prompts and revisions and talking about how to create an outline and to do the most creative essay that you possibly can. Supplements are the second part of the college essay. So you may have your main college essay, which is, the last section, the writing section on the Common App. But the supplements will come in forms of in an additional section called questions. And in there will be additional prompts. It could be something as a 100-word answer to a full 3-paragraph essay. So what I ask is that you go through each college after you have made your list, and you go into the supplemental section and you look at what the prompts are. You copy and paste each prompt and you put it into a Google Doc, and you go through and you take a look at what is being asked of you. If you're a student who's applying to Boston College and Villanova and Notre Dame, you might have a lot of supplements that overlap and look very similar. So please make sure you're aware of what writing prompts or what writing supplements are expected of you, so that you can go through and take a look at them and be very prepared. Please do not do a supplement or an essay the day that your application is due. This should be 2-3 weeks of time that you are putting into this. The essay is more important now than it has ever been. And honestly, in most years, I have always been pretty adamant about the essay is really just to show another piece of who you are. But because this year there is no standardized tests that are mandatory, the writing sample is really one of the biggest pieces that the college has to get to know who you are. And they want to see what you're passionate about. And they don't care whether you are, someone who takes care of a sibling at home, or whether you're, an all-American athlete. They want to know who you are and what makes you tick. Please let them get a view into your life outside of what you are as a student here, okay? And please proofread your essay. There's always going to be, even if you spell check it, there's always going to be errors. So come and see us. We are here as another set of eyes. Your English teacher is always there to review it. Miss Sanclivier, Miss Conley, and myself, you can certainly set up times with us to review any writing sample that you have. And I'll leave the writing part here and tell you that I have had very many people tell me that the writing samples that some of our students have submitted are not good enough for certain colleges. And being on a good basis with a lot of those representatives, they'll call and say, hey, listen, this kid looks really great on paper. However, his writing is terrible. And if he revises these essays or these supplements, the likelihood of him getting in is great. If he doesn't, he's not going to be accepted. He will be deferred. So please know your audience. If you're applying to the University of Notre Dame, know what they're looking for. Take a look at what their essays are asking you and do your research, okay? All right, so I'm gonna go over the surveys very quickly and the links are here. There's surveys that we ask that you please complete. There's 6 pieces. 3 of those 6 you should have done in the springtime, which is what I discussed when we had our first meeting in January of last year. But just in case you have not done it, they are all here for you. So if you take a look underneath the counselor's requirements, all the links are here for everything for you. Make sure that every application always requires a counselor letter. It's mandatory. The counselors, you don't need to ask them. They know they need to write it. But what they need is information from you in order to do it. So that's why we ask you to do a very comprehensive parent survey and student survey. You are essentially in charge of your letter of recommendation. What you write for them is going to go in the letter. So you are really in control of that. There's a lot of things that the counselors don't know about you. And so these surveys are really set to let them know who you are, and again, what your parents are proud of you for and what you're proud of, and so that they can really write the best letter possible. We want schools to accept you, and so we want you to look as best as possible on a piece of paper. So please take your time, and if you need to revise anything that you have given, send a supplement in, whatever that may be, please do that, because this is a really important part of the application process. Teacher letters, students are responsible for requesting a letter of recommendation before sending in the forms, okay? I know that, being in and out of the building, it's a little bit difficult. So if you haven't asked a teacher, please go and see them, at the end of the day, or send them an email and let them know that you'd like them to write your letter, and then complete the teacher recommendation survey and make sure that you give them any information that they require. Additionally, they may ask you for a resume, but traditionally, if you give them the recommendation survey, they should be okay with that. All right. Some colleges need 2 letters, some need 1. If they ask for 2, you need to send 2. Don't send them 22. They cannot read them, and they will be probably pretty annoyed if you do so. If you have, a school that takes 3 or 4, and 3 and 4, letter 3 and 4 say something different than 1 and 2, then by all means send them. But if it's the same content and it looks exactly the same as letters 1 and 2, don't do it. Okay. So again, if you have questions, please come and see me, and I'm happy to explain, that process a little bit further. This is what the teacher recommendation form looks like. And again, you have this all digitally. So it's in paper in your student planning guide, which I gave you last year. It is, the virtual forms are at the bottom of every page in the student planning guide. And I also, on the page prior to this, the links to every form is here. This is what the teacher recommendation form looks like. We ask that you fill this out for each teacher, just as a reminder. Again, teachers have 80 to 100 letters to write at some points. And so, if you're applying to Boston College, I ask that you fill this out and say, Miss Conley, I'm applying on November 1st. Please make sure that my letter gets there. This is just another layer of a reminder for them. Transcript request form, this is essentially the same form. This goes to your counselor. Even though you have put all of your schools into Naviance, biggest flaw that I have with Naviance is that there is no announcement to the counselors that basically says, hey, guess what? Jimmy Jones is applying on October 15th. You need to send in his form or send in his transcripts. So we ask that you fill this form out electronically to give to your counselor to, again, remind them, hey, I have a November 1st deadline and these are the schools I'm applying to, again. So there's a lot of layers here just as to make sure we don't miss our deadlines, okay? All right, so transcripts were sent out today. Like I said to parents, please review the document and sign it electronically. This is the transcript release form. It also is in the email that was sent to you. Take a look at it, and please make sure that if there is anything that you get back, your comments to me no later than October 1st. I want to make sure that I have those release forms back in my possession before anything goes out from our office. The last thing we want to do is send out a transcript that is incorrect. All right. So like I referred to the college planning guide, which is essentially, the bound book, the 50 pages that I gave you last year. It is your go-to. Even if you never see me, you never come in, you don't have a meeting with me, everything you need to apply is in that book. This is the digital version of it. And section 4 contains every form that you will need in order to have a complete application. So if you have any questions, you can refer to the planning guide, and each form, like I said, in the digital version is found on their respective page. All right, and then I'm just going to talk a little bit about SATs and what that means this year. Many of the SAT and ACT administrations for the spring and fall have been canceled. Please, please, please make sure that if you are registered on a Saturday for an SAT or an ACT, that you call the guidance office of the school you're registered and ask them, is the test being given tomorrow? Because even though the College Board and the ACT website are updating certain things, they're not updating everything. And so what has happened is many kids will show up and the test is canceled, and nobody tells you that. A lot of times you'll go on to your ACT or SAT, the website, and you'll see where you're registered, and it'll say postponed, and it'll give you a new test site. I've heard of things as kids have been rescheduled for a school in Georgia or South Carolina because that's the closest test site that's available. I want to just tell you that if you don't submit a test score this year, it truly is okay. I know that everybody is very nervous to believe that, but your college or university that you're applying to, it's going to tell you on the website whether they are test optional for 2021 or not. So please make sure, if you aren't sure, go to the website and see, is Penn State really test optional this year? And you go to the site. It is 100% test optional no matter what program you are looking at. Nova Southeastern, for instance, if you want to be a dentist and go into their 7-year dental program, you still need test scores. So please know your schools and know exactly what the requirements are before you assume one way or the other. The other site that you can check out is fairtest.org. That generally is pretty up to date with all of the test optional schools before COVID was a thing and tests went out the window. You are in a very fortunate time in the way that if you're not a good test taker, you have a pass. And I promise this by saying that you are really, truly okay in not submitting a test if the school truly is test optional. Okay, that's pretty much all I have for tonight. I know it's a lot of information. I don't want to overwhelm you. I just want to leave you with the contact information of our entire department. If you are not aware of who your guidance counselor is, Mrs. Niles is at the top of the screen. She is students with the last name A through F. All of the forms should be sent back to Mrs. Niles. If you do them electronically, they will go directly to her. The same with Mr. Eric Crawford, who has students' names G through N, and Mrs. Catherine Smallman, who is a little round the dot on the screen. Her camera is not working. She has students' last names O through N. And then I can't forget about our wonderful registrar, Mrs. Kathy Corrado, whose email is down below. She is somebody who, if you need a transcript for an athletic pre-read or any kind of release forms, she's the gatekeeper. She keeps us all together, and she's truly the boss of our department. So if you have anything, please make sure you reach out to her. And, we are all here to help you. I know that this can be an overwhelming process and that this is a very odd time. So we, too, are learning as we go through this process. And like I said, we're here with you every step of the way. So if there's anything that any of us can do to help you, please reach out. We are scheduling Zoom meetings, Google Meets, whatever that is. And like I said, thank you so much for joining us tonight. And I will open it up to questions at this point. So anything we can do to help. Can a student apply EA to all schools 6 to 8 if he is interested? And absolutely. If you are done and you are ready to go, you can apply to every school early action. The only caveat is that you can apply to one early decision school, and then that's really it. And then you can apply early action or to state school, so like a Maryland or a Penn State or something like that. Just not more than one group.
Mr. Walter, can I just add that here's the I created a link for the slides. Let's a couple people asked for them. So what's on your screen now, that tiny URL, is a link directly to Ms. Walter's slide deck for tonight. And someone asked about the college surveys. This is a link to the survey pages on the Bergen Catholic website.
Perfect.
And they're both on the they're both in the chat. So if you're missing here, they're both on the chat.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Is Bergen facilitating the ACT on October 20th? Yes. So out of sheer desperation for the boys that really couldn't take a test, I did arrange for the ACT to be held here on October 20th. So yes, we are hosting that right now in the gymnasium. We will be doing it during a school day. Right now, I think we have 57 seniors that are registered for it. So I'm hoping that, all goes well and that we can actually hold the test and that nothing, out of our control happens.
Can I just echo what you said? I think it oftentimes parents may not believe the school counselors because they're there every day, or I know when I was in high schools, someone from a college would come in and say something. We really understand the difficulty and the nature of people not being able to take any standardized tests. I have not heard a single college representative sit there and say, in fact, I've heard the opposite. Like I know several reps in the state of Florida. The Florida public schools have yet to change their policy, and it's probably mainly because it's bureaucratic. But their college counselors are freaking out because they still require to go to University of Florida and other places, SATs and ACTs, and they just don't know how kids are going to get those scores. I think everyone on the college side understands the reality of this year is that we're not going to see SAT or ACT test scores. And so we really are truly saying, like, we've been test optional, but other schools who've done it for the year, for the next 2 years, they truly are going that way. And I know that's maybe not the most comforting thought, but maybe with the exception of the most exclusive schools, but one of the first schools to go test optional was Harvard. So it is a serious. We all know what's going on, and so I've told students, like, if you're looking at, again, Iona and similar type institutions, I wouldn't go out of your way to take your SAT or ACT, because I much prefer to see a Bergen Catholic, 3-year transcript, 4-year transcript. It shows me more of what you're able to do. Yeah.
Kyle, I just shared it with you. You should have gotten it. So did the boys send the request to the teachers for recommendations now? Yes. So the teacher recommendations, the Naviance link that is in the video that I shared with the boys, it's there for them. And when they click on it, they're able to go in and from a pull down menu, they're able to choose who they want to write their letters. And so you can request that the letters go to every teacher or to a select, just to a select group. So you can go through and take a look. No. Can schools see which other schools the student applied to? That's a good question, and we get that every year. No, the application is absolutely confidential. So the only people that know who's applied where are you and your counselor and myself, obviously, and the teachers who you have to share it with. But no, the schools cannot see what other schools you've applied to, unless you share that with them. But there's really no. There used to be a question on the Common App that asked you what other schools you were applying to, but that's not there anymore. I added requests for my recommendations on Naviance, but both teachers said they didn't get. Is there anything that I can do? You should come and see me, because that's obviously, there's a glitch there. Unless you didn't match your accounts or there's something that the teachers aren't looking in the right place. There could have been that the systems haven't merged. There's a couple of things, but I can take a look and troubleshoot for sure. Anyone else? Is there anything, Mrs. Niles or Mr. Crawford, that you'd like to add, or Mrs. Smallman?
The only thing I would add is I bounce off of what Brother Ford and you both said about tests. And this year, I know that I sat in on a video conference with schools from the Big Ten, and they were saying the exact same thing, is that because of this year and it being so unique, that they were going test optional. So that should alleviate a whole lot of stress for our students. In my heart of hearts, I'm hoping that it rolls forward. I can't promise that. I don't think any of us can promise that. But being an educator at heart, I really hope that the reliance on standardized tests, which is truly just a snapshot in time, really kind of falls by the wayside. But again, that's my personal hope. That's not coming from anybody any more important than I am right now. So I think between our students are always so well prepared for the application process. Most of them have already taken tests. We're giving the opportunity for the ACT on the 20th of October as well, that they're fully prepared for this application cycle. And I think they're going to do an excellent job, as they always do.
Thank you so much. Okay. Any other questions in the chat, or we're good? All right. So everyone has our contact information. So, like I said, please feel free to reach out. We're happy to have any kind of meetings that you might have. I know that I've spoken with a lot of you in the spring, and that you have been in touch with follow-up questions. So, like I said, the boys are definitely, welcome. I've seen a lot of you this week just popping in and out. Please use us as resources. We are here. I know that a lot of you are overwhelmed, and we are too, to a certain extent. So again, please use us in whatever way we can help you, okay?
There's one more question. I'll take that. I just sent out the transcripts probably about 20 minutes ago. So if you didn't get it, make sure you check your spam folder. If for some reason you're still having difficulty, certainly either your counselor or myself can get you the copy.
Okay. All righty. Well, thank you so much all for joining us tonight, and hope you guys have a wonderful night and enjoy the rest of the school year.